Hi, folks. Again, welcome to Roy's Tie-Dye Sci-Fi Corner. And unfortunately, we had some difficulty with technical difficulties, but this is our first time actually broadcasting from the webpage. So thank you for standing by. This is a really exciting time in regards to the show, and I really want to welcome everybody out there and thank you for joining us. And again, Mary Beth, thank you for being my special co-host tonight.
Well, thanks for having me. No worries. People are coming in. I see Rizzo's here, Vinny Fodi's here. Let's see who else is rolling in.
Awesome. Hey, guys.
Here. Hi, guys. Sorry about that. We're here now.
Hey, it wouldn't be live. It wouldn't be a live broadcast if we didn't have some problems on this show. So tonight we're going to be talking, well, actually, before we get started, Mary Beth and I were just talking about this, and, you know, I usually talk about this towards the end of the show. And just to start off, there's a lot of stuff that's going on in the world right now. It's a really scary time. And, you know, everybody's been dealing with COVID and that piece of it, which has caused us to be in this type of isolation, I guess you could say. And now there's other things that are going on in the world where we're really being, within the country, I should say, where we're being spread apart. And I think it's just really important that we just all remember that we are, you know, one in the sense of being, you know, the human race, and people, you know, we're all born the same way. We all come into this world the same way. And unfortunately, we all exit the same way. And we just really have to remember that we have to give everybody the respect that they, you know, definitely deserve, and just be there for each other. And especially during this time, it's 2020 is going to go down as one of those years that's going to be in the history books and remembered for not being very pleasant.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, Roy, I completely agree. And that's really, really well said. And I just want to say that I realize that times like these can be emotionally and mentally draining and exhausting. And we just, we really hope that this hour of chat can be like a recharge for you. And it's okay to have a little bit of fun because it helps refresh and recharge you and kind of re-energize you. So you can get back out there to get back in the fight again. So thanks everybody for watching. We really, really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you, folks. So with that said,
we're
going to be talking tonight about a 1979 movie, which is a James Bond film. And honestly, I have to say it is probably one of my, not most favorite James Bond films, but one of the James Bond films that I really had the most fun with. It was the first James Bond film that I actually saw in the theater. I was actually 13 years old, and it is Moonraker.
It is Moonraker. So Roy, I think you should start a new segment on the show. I think you should call it Roy Made Me Watch It. And I'll be the first one. Roy made me watch it. He asked if I could do this, and I said, I've never seen Moonraker, but I was game. So, I mean, in 1979, I'm like 8. I mean, you know, I'm an 8-year-old little girl. Moonraker's kind of, I'm not their demographic. Like, I wasn't really going to go see that, but I was game to try and to check it all out. And whoa, what a spectacle. What a spectacle. He texted me today. He's like, so what'd you think? I'm like, what did you just make me watch? There was so much going on in that movie. And it was not at all what I expected, because like I was familiar with Bond. I knew what James Bond was. And I knew that, you know, Daniel Craig looked hot in a Speedo, but I was not expecting this. This is not what I thought it would be.
This was not the James Bond that you thought James Bond was going to be, being the second James Bond.
Exactly.
Yeah, interesting enough, this was Roger Moore's 4th time as Bond. He had done Live and Let Die in 1973. He did The Man with the Golden Gun in 1974. He did The Spy Who Loved Me in 1977. And then
he did
Moonraker.
Yeah. So is it fair to categorize the Moore years as the humor, like the humor in the Bond years, more comedic aspects to it?
He definitely brought a different type of role, or a different type of character to James Bond. I mean, if you think about it, James Bond in 1962, because it premiered with Sean Connery with Dr. No, and I mean, he was very serious. He was a killer. I mean, you know, he didn't take anything, and he was very chauvinistic, very harsh, but, you know, very direct. And he had that role for almost a total of 9 years, up until, you know, he did Diamonds Are Forever. I mean, he didn't do the 1969 movie, On Her Majesty's Secret Service, but essentially he created the role that Ian Fleming had created. Yeah. But to your point, when Roger Moore came in and took on, it was a totally different take on the character. And I think his earlier versions of it, with Live and Let Die and The Man with the Golden Gun, were a little bit more serious. But as the 70s progressed, it definitely started to take on a role that was almost, I hate to use the word cartoonish, but it was almost satirical.
Yes. Now, you tell me, I had heard that because Roger Moore had done The Saint.
Yes,
so
he did.
We already know he was capable of, I mean, The Saint had its moments, but we already know he was capable of a fairly serious, kind of straightforward kind of thing. But I heard that he is the one who, he's like, my Bond is going to have to rely on his wit and his charm, because he didn't feel he had the physicality that Connery had. Is this accurate? Is this what you'd heard?
I did hear that, yes. And he wanted to bring a different type of character to the table, which he definitely did. And The Saint, he was known for that show, and that was in the 60s. And I believe he did that role for about 7 years, if my memory serves correct. I'm sure somebody out there will correct me if I'm wrong on that. But, so he definitely had the chops as far as being, a well-established actor. He actually had directed episodes of The Saint as it, got into progression into the later years, which a lot of times happens with, actors that are on a series for a long period of time. He went on to do a show, I believe it was called The Persuaders, and that was with Tony Curtis.
Okay.
And I believe they did that for a season or two. And that was right before he took on the role of James Bond. And essentially it was almost like these two guys, one was English and then the other was, from the Bronx. And that was Tony Curtis, which was an interesting combination.
So it was Odd Couple, but Odd Couple Spies or something.
Exactly. Mary Beth, I just want to give a quick shout out. Just want to say hi to John. John, hey, thanks for joining. And John is saying The Persuaders. Yep. Martin, thanks for joining. Also, Warren, Gordon, thanks for joining, guys. Vince, want to say hi. Whatchamacallit? Martin Ben is saying, went to the movies to see this, and partway through, as a 7-year-old behind me said, he doesn't look after his stuff, does he, Dad? To his dad, as Bond 3 down his crash helmet.
Warren's saying, am I in the right place? I was looking for remembering sci-fi television. Yes, Warren, you're in the right place.
Yes, because this is sci-fi, because this is where Bond went into space. So
this is where Bond went into space. So the whole reason, at the end of Spy Who Loved Me, the one that was previewed was For Your Eyes Only. Not previewed, but the one that was suggested. They were like, and he'll be back in For Your Eyes Only. But then Star Wars happened.
That's right.
So they had to keep up. And suddenly they took a hard left, and then poor James Bond got shot into space.
And it's funny, too, because I remember, if everybody out there, there's a lot of people out there that watch Channel 11, WPIX out of New York City, and also ABC, which was, Channel 7. They would show the movies on ABC on Sunday nights, and it would be the James Bond movies. And I remember as a kid, and I was probably like around maybe 11, 12, seeing those earlier, Roger Moore movies. And to your point, after The Spy Who Loved Me, it said, James Bond will return in For Your Eyes Only. So I thought, okay, this is going to be really cool. And then, lo and behold, you've got Moonraker. But as a kid that was loving, Star Trek that I started watching in 72, and Space 1999 in 75, and then all the other stuff that was, was going on, the fact that, Bond was going to be going into space sounded pretty good. And who remembers Starlog magazine? I know we've talked about this out there, but here, Starlog number 22, and this was actually an original of mine, and I dug it out, and Bond was on the cover, which was kind of cool.
Wearing his suit over his suit, because he's Bond. If we're going to space, we're going with a bow tie.
Exactly.
So it took like an hour and a half for this movie to actually get to space, but they did. So let's kind of dive in, and let's start with the beginning. The opening
we were talking about this.
Yeah, we're talking about the opening sequence is the skydive sequence. And before we started, we were just saying, like, this is really commonplace. We've seen a million skydive sequences in movies and TV shows nowadays, because nowadays you've got a little digital camera and they're small and they're light, and you can have multiple on and off you pop. For this sequence, they had to figure out, first of all, really flat packed parachutes so they could wear them underneath their suit jackets and they wouldn't be seen. And the suit jackets had a seam right up the back with Velcro, so it would rip open and they could get the parachute out without having to actually take the jacket off, which could potentially be dangerous. They figured that out. And then they figured out, so guys, this wasn't digital. They were actually filming with film, like actual film. So they actually had to figure out a lighter camera rig that the guys could wear on their, or the one stunt coordinator could wear on his head and film. And they needed to know how much like usable fall time, like how much falling do we actually have to work in before we have to stop filming and pull our own shoots. Like that whole scene was actually kind of a incredible feat of not engineering, but like calculating and engineering, like, you know.
Oh, absolutely. You're absolutely right about that. Because they actually had to do it 80 times. They had to do 80 different types of flights to go up to in order to get this footage that was only going to last for 2 minutes. And they had to splice it and edit it together so it would be usable. And I mean, this sequence, similar to The Spy Who Loved Me, is incredible. I mean, the opening for this film is just breathtaking.
It is. And interestingly, is actually not directed by Louis Gilbert. It was directed by the second unit. And that was John Glenn, who would then go on to direct the next movie, which is For Your Eyes Only.
Yes.
Right? Is that the one that came next? Yeah.
It was.
So he did go on to become a Bond director, but he did good with the sequence. He clearly had, like, he had it framed. He had the action. You could follow the action. Yep. He did a great job with the sequence.
And James Bond's stunt double and the skydiver that was doing this, he actually looked like James Bond. I heard that they had to basically give him a haircut and just, you know, kind of like, you know, groom him a little bit.
They said shave or something, yeah.
Yeah, but he essentially looked just like Roger Moore. And it's interesting. I've watched that scene and it's really quick. And if you're watching, it looks like he actually has goggles on. If you really catch it, like for maybe like half a second, because the villain, the pilot, obviously had the goggles on, and you know it was justified. But for Bond, he wouldn't have been wearing it. But while he's doing the sequence, it looks like he almost has like these clear goggles on. But it was just amazing.
Yeah. It's a great start. So it kind of, to me, being the unindoctrinated, being the newbie, to me that was a typical Bond start. I'm like, okay, we're off and running. And then comes the classic Bond open, and they always have like the coolest opens when, you know, the music plays and the credits roll. And this one, they say they were mad because this open cost more than the whole last film, or like the whole, or something like that. Like this open somehow was wildly expensive, and I'm not sure how. It was girls jumping on trampolines. Like, what was expensive about it? Do we know?
That I'm not sure about. I don't understand why that was so expensive for the production. I did see that in my research as well too. But to me, a lot of what they do with these Bond movies, I mean, that's part of the whole process, and that's what makes it up. But there seemed to be a lot of dissension in regards to that they weren't very happy about it, and it cost a lot of money, which...
Yeah, that the open cost a lot of money.
Yeah.
Well, this was the most expensive Bond to date.
Yes, it was.
As of that date.
I think, what was it,
30 million? It did very well. It got its money back, so we can't complain, but...
No, and it was the highest grossing Bond movie up until 1995 when GoldenEye came out.
GoldenEye. It was one of the modern ones. Yeah.
Yeah. But they really, I mean, with all that said, it just goes to show you that the movie that may not have been the best movie doesn't turn out to be not the, worst financially. And in the box office, it's just that, the target audience was, the 12, the 13, the 14, 15-year-olds that were into like the science fiction, or even the adults that were really into science fiction. And, it worked because they were, sailing along with Star Wars. So timing is really everything.
Absolutely. So let's kind of walk through this movie a little bit and look at where they spent this money. We can take it scene by scene, because the sets were just incredible. The sets alone were like a spectacle. That was awesome. The sets all looked awesome.
I know you never can go wrong with James Bond with the sets, especially in that era.
Toward the end, and I know I'm jumping ahead, but toward the end, the one set that, like, at first you walk in, it's like a jungle, inside a jungle cave, and there's a pool and a snake in that scene, and then that cuts open. Oh, but then here's our not space station, but here's where we're launching this thing from, and it's all like modern and sci-fi. Like, what a great juxtaposition! Like, here's a jungle pool, but here's our cool computer room. Like, so cool.
Hey, we got some people checking in. I just want to say, hey, Daniel, thanks for checking in. He says, hi, Mary Beth.
Oh, hello, Daniel.
Gordon is saying it was all that Space Shuttle 6. And Francine is joining us. Hey, Francine, thanks for joining us. Glad you're joining us tonight.
Hi, guys. So, all right, so what happens? I'm trying to think what happens first.
Well, right after that whole sequence, then,
Yeah.
I mean, it turns out that he's going to M's, office to find out what happened, because essentially the space shuttle, the Moonraker, was hijacked on its way to the Americans, because it was on loan from the British government, and the British government was having it transported. But while it's being transported, these two enemy agents slip into the pilot section and they steal it right off of the plane that's carrying it, and then it goes down. It's like, how do you lose a space shuttle?
Yeah, exactly. And fueled up, like loaded with fuel, ready to go.
Exactly.
Take off. So I was watching a video review of this movie, and they juxtaposed the opening sequence to Spy, Who Loved Me, and this, and they were almost beat for beat the exact same thing. Like something gets stolen, bad reaction. Oh, they react and go, oh no, there's a call to M. M takes a call. He then stands up and goes to the door and opens that gorgeously upholstered door. He opens that door and he says to Moneypenny, "Where's Bond?" And Moneypenny responds with some kind of an innuendo or something. And the beginning of Spy and the beginning of this movie were beat for beat for beat the exact same thing, like shot for shot, the exact same movie. It was hilarious. Totally
in sync. It's funny too. They almost had like a running gag through this movie, because every time Bond sees Moneypenny, he's like, "Oh, she says, where were you?" And he goes, "Well, you wouldn't believe it, but I just actually, fell out of an airplane." And then she looks at him like, "Yeah, right." And it's like every time she winds up seeing him, he's always giving another story.
Yeah. So this is the same Moneypenny actress, but is it me, or is she looking a little older somehow? Like, she used to have cute, like, youthful haircut, and she looked young, and she kind of flirt with him.
Yeah.
And now she suddenly seems old.
Yeah. And she started the role in 1962, and she progressed with that role, I believe, until 1985, and that was Lois Maxwell. And
Lois Maxwell, that's right.
Interesting about Lois Maxwell, two tidbits of interesting history here, and it's going to be here comes the James Bond Space 1999 connection first.
All roads.
All roads. When that upholstered door that you were talking about for M's office, does anybody know where M's office also showed up in a Space 1999 episode? Does anybody have any ideas out there?
They reused the door.
They actually reused the office.
Oh, the whole office. All right.
What happened was,
knows.
Yeah, and we'll come back to that. But where was that office scene in a Space 1999 episode? And it's really not too hard of a question, because there was only a few times on Space 1999 where we actually were on Earth. And yes, Gordon's got it. Dragon's Domain. That's correct. They actually used that set for Dragon's Domain, where they went back to a flashback sequence on Earth, and it was at Pinewood Studios. It was just appropriate.
Rizzo saying she was also on UFO.
She was. She filled in for the secretary. She was in, I think, one episode of UFO, Lois Maxwell. That's
Jill
correct.
Says she's a great Moneypenny. Daniel says, "How are Ty and Tilly?" Daniel, Tilly's right here. They're fine. They're doing great. They're happy babies. So anyway, so this movie has, as we keep going with this movie has, I'm pretty sure, a pigeon doing a double take, a laser battle in space, and possibly a Mandela effect. So let's keep going.
Well, let me tell you something. The fact that you're talking about the pigeon, that's the one scene in that movie that really just kind of, I mean, we are jumping ahead a little bit. I mean, it's a little bit later on. Yeah. But that it's a scene of silliness, and this film actually invokes that. I mean, it's just something that takes place, but we can get to that a little later.
Well, we will. So we can kind of skim through. So off he goes to Drax's
estate. Yeah. Beautiful.
And he meets the beautiful, I can't think of her name. Her real name was Corinne or something. What was her name?
Yes. Corinne Dufour.
Yeah.
The sacrificial Bond girl in the movie.
There's always one.
No spoilers. Sorry,
really.
Guys.
Really.
I know it's 42. It's 41 years. I'm sorry.
But so I wrote down the things that made me go, but I also wrote down the things that I think they did right. And coming up here is a scene that I think they did right. And it's the centrifuge scene. I think they did that really well. And he's in trouble and he's clearly suffering. And for the first and I think only time you see that in this movie, he might be in trouble.
Yeah.
Because then later on the movie just sort of yields to camp, to pure camp, and he's never truly in trouble. But this is the one and only time where he is actually in trouble. And but he sorts it out, he gets out of it. But they did really great effects. We were saying before we started how they were like blowing air at him and stuff to get that like face moving effect of the G's, of pulling the G's. And
exactly.
Well done.
I was even saying how they used that in Space 1999 in the Metamorph, because Martin Landau, Barbara Bain, and Nick Tate, they attach this to your head, and they're literally blowing the pressure in to give the simulation of the G-force effect. And to your point, it's really convincing because Bond is really trying to hold out too, because before he goes into that chamber, he's kind of like having like this, back and forth dialogue with Holly Goodhead, who's essentially alienated because he's, called her out for being a woman. She's in this high position, and it's almost like there's the act of chauvinism here where he doesn't have the respect, and then he's trying to like backpedal, and it's not working with her.
He's kind of mansplaining her, like she's saying, and this is the what, and he's like, and he says right away what it is. Like he's kind of mansplaining.
Yeah, it was pretty bad with that.
Yeah, it was pretty bad. But in this part of the movie, we also get the second thing that I thought was good, and that's Drax himself. He was a really good villain. Like
Michael Lansdale.
Yeah, he's subtle. He maybe needed to be in another movie altogether, but he's really good.
He's very cultured, and he comes across as being very intelligent, and he's going to be a match. And as far as matching wits with James Bond, it's like things are not going to slip by him, and he's going to be almost like a chess game. Very calculating with him.
And they do bother to take some time to set him up so that it pays off later in the movie. Him throwing the meat to the dogs was not just something to do while he had exposition. That was on purpose, to show how much he demanded perfection, because then that pays off later in the movie. So that part's pretty good. The double take pigeon, I don't know about that, but that part was really good.
The double take pigeon, I know that always makes me shudder.
No, this movie, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say the other thing too is we're introduced, and they did a kind of a prelude going back to James Bond's M's office when Q comes out, because Q is always so cool. Q has always got the gadgets in the James Bond movies, and then he gives him the device that he puts onto his wrist, and then he lets him demonstrate, and he shoots it at the painting, and he goes, just flick the wrist, and he goes like this, and it goes and it hits it, and then when he's leaving the office, he goes, it's wonderful. You make sure you have him in the stores for Christmas time. He's always like snarking at him, and always irritating.
It's almost like a Spider-Man, like the way the Spider-Man shoots his web, but not it's a dart. But that he shot it at a picture of King William, and that actor played King William in some other piece a while when he in his younger day. So he was actually shooting M when he did that. But we also get introduced in this part of the movie, back at the centrifuge, or actually before the centrifuge. We also get introduced to the other henchman, or the henchman du jour, Chang. Because Chang
actually was a expert. He held a position as far as for karate. He was well respected, and I read that
he was a teacher or something.
Yeah, Michael, and I'm trying to think of the guys, the producer of the movie, and I'm coming up short, and I really shouldn't be. But Michael Wilson. Michael Wilson had gone to his classes to be educated in, as far as was one of his pupils, and he thought he would be great for the film, and that's how he actually was recruited for the position as second henchman. Yeah,
that's cool. He did great.
He really did.
Was he ever in anything else? I didn't stop to look him up. He seems like he would have been popular.
He probably would have been, but nothing that I came across. I'm sure, maybe he had done. I'm sure it would have led to something, because he definitely was very, good and well known, or very strong in the martial arts.
Yeah, super strong. Yeah.
In fact, when they have their battle in that glass factory, it actually holds the record of the most glass being broken.
Yeah, and we'll talk about that. So wrapping up this whole kind of section, this movie. It's weird. It's like a dichotomy. It's like it's two movies at once. Wrapping up this sort of beginning section of the movie is the horrible death of Corinne, the helicopter pilot.
Yeah. And
this is dark. Like the rest of the movie has some moments of camp and cartoony, and this is pretty dark. The poor thing goes running and he sicks those dogs on her, and the dogs get her, and it's like.
And the music is playing. It's very intense, and the photography is excellent too, because as you know, as he's doing this and he's preparing, she knows, because she's almost like making her way for the cart. And then you're almost thinking like, go for the cart, but you know the cart's not going to go fast enough. But unfortunately, she's not going to be able to run fast enough to get away from those dogs. And then once he releases them, they have that music playing, and they do this really slow close up on him, and they're coming in on an angle, and you really just you see the sinisterism from him, how bad this guy is, because he's basically executing her with these dogs. Yeah, he is. He's crazy.
Yeah. But it's shot beautifully, like great angles, and the woods are beautiful, gorgeous mist in the woods, and you know, it ends with the gong of the bell, the tolling of the bell.
And then the camera just raises, and when the dogs attack her, it just comes up, and it's like you don't see anything.
It's shot like any horror movie.
Yes.
And then later on, we do have a pigeon doing a double take. So I'm just saying,
You always got to come back to that pigeon.
Multifaceted. I am, because that thing is bothering me. Like, what is happening there?
That pigeon should have been shot.
So what happens? So what happens is now they all go to Venice, and yes, now is that scene where they broke records by smashing up like all the glass, like every single thing. And you know they're setting it up, because the tour guide comes through and she's like, and look at all this beautiful glass that's valued at I don't know how many millions of dollars, and you're just like, oh, that's all gonna get smashed.
And interesting too, when that tour guide is doing it, she looks at Bond and she takes she's giving her tour speech and she's into everything, and you know, with all the tourists, but she pauses and then she continues, and that was almost a giveaway. Yeah, and it's like a 2-second pause. Yeah. Which is the giveaway that she's in on it. So you suspect. And then what happens is later on, we actually get to see her too. So it's kind of interesting.
So in there somewhere, he does go and find the vial of the nerve gas. So, and he puts this little glass vial of deadly nerve gas like in his pocket somewhere, and then proceeds to have this battle.
And it never breaks. It never breaks.
Who's trying to smash him with that big baton or whatever you call that big stick? Like,
yes, that's probably the only glass in the scene that didn't break.
Yeah, it's the only glass in the scene. The irony of it is the only glass in the scene that didn't break. And if it had broken, it would have killed both of them, probably. I mean, it was very potent nerve gas, right? So he's getting smashed and he's ducking and diving, and oh God, I'm like, okay, we might want to take that out of your pocket. Just saying.
Oh, you know what though? We jumped ahead a little bit. And one thing I want to bring up too is, you know, Mike just brought up something, Rizzo. Now, there were a lot of moments of music that this movie gave respect to. And what was interesting is when Bond is kind of hiding in the background to see about them going into this doorway, the guy that, you know, the sign store, the guy punches in the code and it goes, and I can't do it. I can't sing. I can't do anything. So you could probably do it better than I. And it was the chords for CE3K, Close Encounters for Third Kind.
Yeah.
And what happened was they got special permission in order to use that. He went to Steven Spielberg and said, you know, can we do that to pay homage to the movie? And it was really cool because when they hear that, it's like there's almost like this pause, you know, especially when they go back later on and they play that tune to get in the door, and they're like looking at you, that are Frederick Grave and M, like, wait a minute, this sounds really familiar.
Yeah, what is that? And Steven Spielberg repaid the favor by letting, Alfred Broccoli repaid the favor by letting Spielberg use some Bond music in Goonies.
Yes.
So it kind of all worked out.
Yeah. You know why? Because all roads lead back to that pigeon, as Gordon just said.
That pigeon, man.
That scene really irritated me, and that, you know, with the, you know, the gondolas, it was kind of fun because they, you know, Bond, you know, goes to the gondola, and then he's, you know, the guy's like, you know, mowing along, and then this other gondola comes up, and then what happens is there's a literally like a coffin, and the coffin opens.
Yeah,
this guy rises up.
There's like knives and stuff stuck in the
He just takes them out.
It's like, so how long was he in the coffin? Did he know Bond was coming along? Like, how does that? But you can't do that to this movie. You can't. It's like later on when he's making out with Goodhead, they're like laying on the ground in Brazil making out just on a random hilltop. 4 guys in white come along. Like,
I know, right?
Where do you think come from?
It's like, where do they come from?
You have to just accept.
You have to go with the flow
and go with it.
Yep. It's that kind of a movie, folks. If you start questioning it and you start saying, you know what, it's not going to work because it is James Bond.
Just
have
roll
to have
with it.
fun.
Just roll it. And so in there somewhere was another really good scene with Drax, because Bond takes M and the minister, I don't know who, some guy.
Oh, Frederick Grave.
Yeah, back to Drax's to say, hey, he's got nerve gas. We must stop. And Drax actually gets the upper hand on it, and kind of makes Bond look like a fool for like a couple seconds. Another great scene with Drax. Well done, well played. Completely out of character with a double take pigeon, but you know, it just in the movie it has like dual personality. Like really good scene with the bad guy pigeon.
You know what?
Anyway,
I shouldn't even put up the thing that says, you know, James Bond, you know, we have the whole thing up on the main page here, you know, for Bond in space. We should just put that pigeon up on there.
If we could get a gif of it actually doing that, whatever it did with its face. Okay, so then what happens? I forget what comes next.
Well, it's funny. You were talking about when they show up, and you know, it really is a moment where Drax has the upper hand, and he goes, you know, Sir Frederick Grave with distinguished company, all wearing gas masks, and he goes, I sometimes just can't appreciate the English humor.
English humor, yes. Yeah,
you know,
I can't
and
appreciate
like,
English humor. I'm French.
Yeah, that was
I'm
really
French.
funny.
I do not know what you are doing. Yeah.
Because he's French, yeah.
So then off they go to, oh, the minister's mad. I don't know. Off they go. Now we're in Brazil.
Right, because what happened was Bond actually had that vial, which survived that glass fight. It did not break. It was still intact. And he says, you know what? I'm not crazy. This is actually something I found in that lab. Have Q examine it, but be careful because it's lethal. Yeah. And then he tells him that he should take a sabbatical for about 2 weeks. And he goes, where would you go? And he goes, Rio. And the reason why he wants to go to Rio is because he had seen the plans or there was something in that glass factory where all the glass broke. And there was something about Rio de Janeiro, and that's what leads them to go into Rio.
That's right. So wait, what precipitated the actual gondola chase? The guy in the coffin.
Oh, because what happened was he...
I'm getting this movie so mixed up.
You know what? Just go with it. We're in Rio now.
So yeah, I'm like, wait a minute. We missed, because it wasn't just that there was a bird. There was like every gag.
Well, what happened was...
the hovercraft gondola.
Right, because what happened was he was being chased in the gondola, and then he was trying to get away, and then he inflates the gondola where it actually goes into the town, and when it does, they actually did a takeoff, and this is where The Spy Who Loved Me and Moonraker are very similar. You were talking about that earlier, which is very true, because if you saw The Spy Who Loved Me, the car that Bond has comes out of the ocean. And when it's coming out of the ocean, people are like looking all over. There's a dog that does like a double take, and then people are drinking. The one guy is seen in this movie actually, and I can't think of the actor's name.
And he's drinking
the bottle.
Looks at the drink. Yeah.
He looks at the drink. He was the same guy that was on the beach in The Spy Who Loved Me. Like, he's crazy. So what happened was when the gondola inflates, and then it's coming through, and he's driving it through Venice. People were looking, and then of course we've got the pigeon. The pigeon's doing a double take. And then we also have the same guy that was in The Spy Who Loved Me that was drinking. He looks at his bottle or his glass of wine. Yeah. It's like
the waiter's pouring and missing because he's watching the hover gondola.
Exactly. It was a total. Yeah, Mike, you're right. It was a Lotus Esprit. In fact, we have family friends that actually own one of those things. That car is freaking cool.
Really?
Yeah.
Really? Oh God, that's so cool. So yeah, so it wasn't just the pigeon. It's that suddenly there's like a whole bunch of guys. And this almost feels like a turning point for the movie, because up to here, it'd been kind of like standard Bond fare. And suddenly this is like a turning point. And there's I felt like a lot more camp and comedy in from there on, the whole second half of the movie. Actually,
and this actually leads where we see Jaws for the first time, because what's happening is, Drax says that he's going to need a replacment for Jaws, and he's talking to somebody on the phone, and he says,
out the window.
Right.
So
he goes, we can get him.
He calls the henchman hotline, and he says, "Hi, I'm going to need a new henchman." And they're like, "Oh, Jaws is there. We'll send Jaws over." So that's how that happened. So then we go off to Rio, and there's Jaws on the gondola.
Yep.
Right. Another interesting fight scene. Very slow. Like, it was almost like Kirk and the Gorn, like slow.
Yeah, it was a little stretched out.
But never mind that. Just look at the cinematography. The shots of the gondola looking back down at the city. Oh my God, beautiful. So if you weren't interested in the fight, you should just be enjoying the scenery. I mean, it was gorgeous. Really well filmed. I wonder
because when you see that, you want to go to Rio.
Too. Yeah, it makes you want to go to Rio. I wonder if that section was Lewis Gilbert or if it was also John Glenn.
That's a good question. I'm not sure. That's something we'll have to look up.
Interesting.
But both of them were brilliant. And I believe this was we were talking too, Louis Gilbert's last Bond film.
This was his last Bond film. He'd
Yeah.
done 3 or 4 of
A
them. Yeah.
lot.
Did he basically do all of the Roger Moore ones, or?
I think so. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure he did. Be interesting to
Huh.
find. I'd have to look back to see if he did all of them, but he'd been around for a long time, and he definitely, there's a definite tone with his movies.
Yeah, yeah.
For
So
sure.
Bond takes an afternoon off with Manuela, just a little R&R.
Just
But
a
then
R&R.
then
How do you
runs
kill
back
5
into-
hours in Rio? I think was the
5
quote.
hours in Rio. But then he runs back into Dr. Good. Well, do we know she's not Dr.? I guess we don't yet, but he runs back into Dr. Good. No, he does. He knows.
He
at this
does,
time
'cause
that
he-
she's not
yeah.
Dr. Goodhead. She's Agent Goodhead.
CIA.
CIA.
He tripped on her bags on the way out in
Yep.
in Venice.
So he runs back into her and off they go again. And it's kind of funny because they get captured and he's so hot to escape. But if he hadn't escaped, they both would have just ended up in the same place anyway. Like he escapes
Right.
and does all this other stuff and then he ends up right back with her anyway. He should have just gone with her.
See, all roads lead back to
Wells
Dr.
Bay
Good.
Spy, folks.
All roads lead right back to Dr. Goodhead.
And so now finally we're getting close to going to space. I promise, guys, just keep grinding. We can do this. Now we're finally in that gorgeous set that's like a jungle room.
Yep.
That first, jungle room, where he decides,
Well,
okay.
But you know what, Mary Beth?
Yeah.
Before you go on though, one thing I do want to bring up. When he goes to the Amazon, because he winds up going from Rio de Janeiro.
That's right.
to-
That's right.
He goes to the Amazon, and what happens is he makes his way back from when he loses touch with Dr. Goodhead, and he's going through the desert. One thing that they do, again, there's another movie reference as far as music, and it was from the Magnificent Seven. They're playing it while he's on his horse and he's riding to get there. And then when he gets to,
Yes.
it almost looks like a monk's chapel, and
Yes, and
they're doing everything.
And it's money.
What's that, Moneypenny? Yep. And then
Moneypenny.
yeah. And then
What-
she
what
even
are
says
they-
about what happened to you.
What are they doing there?
Oh, they always show up, and that's
Oh,
the
they just show
beauty
up,
of
okay.
Bond. They're stationed everywhere. So it never, they always
How are they?
wind up in the weirdest of places.
You're absolutely right. There's this sudden weird cut of him riding on horseback wearing
Yep.
like the Brazilian cowboy thing.
Exactly, and it was the
and you're
music
like-
was from the Magnificent Seven.
The
Yeah,
other
and
thing
they
we
took,
just completely skipped, which is huge, is the crash of the gondola
yep,
and Jaws's girlfriend. And this is the
Right.
Mandela effect. So I want to ask everyone, just super quick, because I may have I have a possible explanation for this. To the best of your memory, everybody start typing right now. Did Dolly, the girlfriend, glasses, ponytails, did she have braces or no?
oh, that's a good trivia
Type
question.
what you remember right now.
Yep, let's
And we're
see.
going to talk about this. And I found a possible explanation. And if you guys don't know what a Mandela effect is, super, super quick, it's something big that happens that's like national or possibly worldwide, like Tiananmen Square, that people remember differently. And they
Mhm.
don't just remember it differently and then go, oh, I guess I got that wrong. No, they're like, but I saw a video and I saw a picture and I know I read it. Like they swear they're just like going crazy, going, I think this is what it was. I think this is what it was. Everyone says braces.
No, I don't think she did though.
Here's the thing. And they thought that's a Mandela effect, that you guys all remembered it wrong because we're in an alternate universe or some
Right.
weird thing. No, you guys, she did have braces, but then later on in the movie she didn't. And they said, oh, it's a continuity error. And so they digitally took out her braces and later on. But if you watch the movie early, if you saw the movie on early TV, or if you saw it in the theater, or if you saw it in early TV runs, she still had the braces. And
That's
people have been posting screenshots from like the television from like early 80s or whenever this thing was on TV. She's got braces. And then
Very
somebody went and digitally put her braces back in. So yeah, they're not sure. Everyone says she has braces, but right now she doesn't have braces. But I think she did have braces.
See, and that's the attraction, because I mean, Jaws has really big braces, and then there she is with her small little
Jaws
braces.
But that would make, but that's the love connection, right? They're the extreme opposites, but they
Well-
both have a mouthful of metal.
And the funny thing is, too, because he's this big guy who always gets into these situations, and then what happens is that car goes crashing into the mountain, and he's stuck, and he's trying to push the wheel off, and he can't get it off.
Yeah,
And I mean,
and then
Jaws
she
has been
comes
through
on.
everything. And then here she comes, little Dolly. She comes up and then boom, she just pushes it. And then she like goes like this with her hands. And then, he looks at her, and then they have the theme from Love Story there,
Yeah.
from, like Romeo and Juliet.
Yeah, it's the theme from Romeo and Juliet. So, okay, just while we're on it, how many times does Jaws die in these movies?
Yeah, that's a good question, guys. How many times?
A lot. And every time he dies, you're like, okay, we're done with him. And then 2 minutes later, he pops back up again.
You cannot kill Jaws. I mean,
Cannot kill
let's just
Jaws.
face it. He's always going to come back.
So, all right. So, skipping back ahead. Now, the world's greatest spy decides we're in that jungle room.
Oh, wait a minute. Before you jump to that, though, there's one other thing, too, because what's happening is the next scene from that, when they're in the Amazon and he's, traveling on the boat,
Oh,
and he's being pursued by Jaws. Yeah. Again, this is another example. Jaws, Bond is seeing that he's going to be going over this waterfall. And what did Q say before he left? He said, you know what? I'll give it to 007 if he can be entrusted with it. Well, guess what? This is another device of, of Q's that Bond, of course, loses. And he sees that it's going to go over the waterfall. So he zips it out. And then he's got this hang glider, which was very popular in the 70s. And he goes up. And then Jaws is looking and he's like, why is he doing this? What's going on? And then he sees, and then of course Jaws has got the silly, faces on his face. And then he takes the wheel and he brushes it out. And then essentially it just goes over the cliff. And then you think Jaws is dead, right, guys? Wrong. No. Now we're in the Amazon. That's true.
So the world's greatest spy at this point now gets to wrestle a snake. And Roger Moore, they said, hey, man, how'd you keep a straight face wrestling that snake? And Roger Moore apparently was like, because I knew I had to go to the bank later. Like, he was legit, like, they paid me a ton of money. I'm going to keep a straight face wrestling the snake. So we get to the snake scene. I mean, was it really necessary? Did it forward the plot any?
Not really.
But we love it anyway.
But what's interesting too about that snake scene, when after he does the snake in with the pen that he got from Holly Goodhead, which he actually stuck into his pocket when he basically lifted that from her. Guys, basically, it's my first basically of the night, if you're keeping track. And what happens is he takes, he gets it, it's done. Jaws, of course, he gets out of the water and he looks up and there's Jaws and he pulls him out like he normally does. And then what's the first thing Bond does? He punches him in the stomach, like it's going to do anything. This is a guy that just, he's fallen into like lava pits and nothing kills him. Like a punch is going to hurt him. But the funny thing is, when Drax says to him, he goes, Mr. Bond, he goes about, why did you, break off the attack with my pet python? One of the things that came up out of this was that Michael Lansdale did not say pet python, but what he did say was boa constrictor. And
was it a boa?
Yeah, and what happened was they dubbed him over with that. So if you look at his, he's actually saying the line, it's not in sync. So it's just kind of
interesting. Boa makes so much more sense. That would be really much more deadly than a python. Although python they're not venomous, but they do bite you. I don't know, whatever.
Oh, I just want to give a quick shout out. Eva, my grade school friend. Thanks for joining, Eva. Great to see you out there. Also, David Lafredo is joining us. Hey, David, thanks for joining us. Just wanted to say hi. Thanks, guys, and thanks for everybody that's on. Just want to say real quick, we are on this new page, Roy's Tie-Dye Sci-Fi Corner, with the new name. Woohoo! So that is the new name. Spread the word, and just wanted to put that out there. And that was my station identification, as they used to do back in the day. Now on to our show.
Now just saying hi to everyone.
All roads lead to basically. Yeah, I hear you.
All roads lead to basically. Yeah, that happens.
But right, so now we start getting into the grit.
Yeah, now we're finally in the big finale, the finale of this movie.
We're going to space.
We're going to space, and
the final frontier.
The final frontier.
The Star Trek connection. There it is, guys.
There it is. I could not find a lot of Star Trek, although I didn't search too hard. I usually I go through crew and I go through cast, but I didn't do that for this one. But
you know what, Mary Beth? The only thing that I could say legitimately would actually be the All Roads Lead to Star Trek. This movie, along with 4 other movies, was up for the Oscar for best special visual effects for the year 1979. The films being Alien, Star Trek: The Motion Picture, so there's the Star Trek connection. This film, Black Hole, in 1941, and Alien actually took it, the first Alien movie. So that
Yeah,
there is kind of a small Star Trek connection that we
small connection. Yeah, usually I kind of go through the crew and stuff. There may have been crew members, but you know, this crew was really international because they filmed in France mostly because for tax reasons, Britain, Venice, Rio, outside of Rio, and in Florida.
Florida for the Amazon scenes, and they filmed in Jupiter. Yeah, it's crazy.
Or Port St. Lucie or somewhere down there. Yeah. So this was an incredibly international film. So I don't know. They could have been crew members from.
That's true.
From all over. But we're finally at the finale. And here's another one of the scenes that I really liked. And it's Drax given his speech, his superior man speech, whatever the heck he's talking about. And there's reaction shots from Bond, but there are also reaction shots from Jaws and Dolly, who's standing there. And later on, Drax will drive it home directly, like he'll tell Jaws straight up. But during the speech, Drax is watching, and you can actually see the wheels turning. And I mean, Jaws is watching, and you can see the wheels turning in Jaws' head, and he's figuring out, oh, I don't really fit into this whole perfect person plan. I might be in trouble here.
Yeah. And
that's kind of when he sort of changes sides.
Right.
And this is really clever. Like he does it all on his face, which is great. We were talking about
acting.
Great acting. We were talking about some facial expressions in this movie and stuff. And they could have done so much. And now suddenly they have a whole new character almost, and they could have done so much more with him. Like they could have done, but he lives. So maybe they do. Maybe someday, maybe Jaws will live again. I don't know.
With the pigeon.
With the pigeon. But because when we get to the end, I'll make my and so Jaws is suddenly reborn as a new character right in that moment.
Well, and here's the thing too. Lewis Gilbert was getting a lot of mail, and a lot of mail was coming from kids. I mean, the parents would mail the letters from the kids, essentially saying that they loved Jaws and they wanted Jaws to live on. So he was almost
forced. Why does he have to be a bad guy?
Yeah, they didn't want him to be a bad guy. I mean, essentially he was going to be one, but then the wheels got turning to, you know what, we're going to turn him good. And that sequence that you just described, I mean, it was very cleverly planted. I mean, when Bond is saying to Drax, anybody that doesn't fit in your standards will essentially be like nixed. And then he goes, absolutely. And then he looks at, at Jaws and he goes, interesting, very interesting.
Yeah, he's
and it's
driving
like,
it home,
boom. Right? It's like, that's the nail in the coffin right there. Yeah. And, Dolly is this sweet character too, because, when all this is being said, because what happens is then Drax says, you know what, dispose of them. And then he's like hesitating. And then he goes, Jaws, you obey me. And he goes, expel them. And then what happens is, Jaws looks at Dolly and she just has this really innocent look. And Jaws doesn't do anything. He just like puts his hands up and says to the guards to carry out the orders. And then what he does is he takes the two and he bashes their heads.
And he pushes them together.
That was the defining moment where Jaws went to the other side.
Yeah. It was great. I think Jaws could have trained as an agent. He could have been 00.
Double Agent Jaws.
00 really tall. And it could have been fun, but But the other thing that's paying off now is Drax's obsession with perfection with the dogs earlier, and he's a psychopath, and he's so egotistical that it doesn't even occur to him that his plan could fail. Of course, the plan's I'm perfect. Of course, the plan will work. which so much of this is kind of mocked in Austin Powers. You remember in Austin Powers when Seth Green's like, "Aren't you going to watch to make sure it happens?" Like Marge is like, "No, I'm just going to assume it all happened."
I know he's trying to countermand him at every point. He's like, we should do this. He's like, no, and then he's like,
starts with freaking laser beam.
Fire the laser beam.
Lasers. So this is what's happening in this moment. He's so sure that his perfect plan is going to work, and he's laying it all out to Bond because he figures, well, Bond's a smart guy. He'll agree with me because I'm so smart. So it was actually pretty well paid off. He was a great villain. I don't know if he was best served in this movie, but he was an interesting villain.
I think that what's almost, and pardon the pun, jumping the shark, jumping the jaws, so to speak. When he actually turned into a good guy, that unfortunately nullified his character because it was like, okay, there's nothing you can do with it then, because it's what are you gonna do? Unless of course they turned him into an agent and then it was this farce and they went off.
What are they going to do with him? Yeah.
Which that was never going to happen. So it's kind of unfortunate. It's like, yeah. And as a kid, I remember seeing this movie the first time, and we didn't even get to the whole thing with the space station, but this is where, things start to shift, and then there's the power, and then they have that one scene where, they're gonna laser the U.S. ship that's coming up. Essentially, that's like a space shuttle, and they used to show this scene like in the movies and the trailers. It was like a powerful scene because, bless you, where he's looking at the zero gravity, to stop the station from rotating, because then they're gonna lose, they're gonna be weightless, and then he hits the button and everybody just goes back, and everything goes flying, and that was huge. But that's where everything changed with that, and it was just what defined the rest of the movie, where things just started to have the big space battle, or the big battle that every James Bond film has at the very end. Where, the set gets destroyed.
Exactly. So after a quick almost killing Bond underneath the engines, we all do eventually get onto these various were they rockets or shuttles? I guess
shuttles. Yeah, it was a shuttle, like the space shuttle.
We do eventually all get onto the shuttles, and off we all go to the space station. And now we're all on the space station with all the perfect people. Standing around looking fabulous in their orange suits. and okay, I don't even know what's happening. There's a battle with the American Space Corps.
Yep.
But it's all so this thing broke records for the most people filming a zero-G scene. They weren't in zero-G, they're all on wires. This thing broke records for the most people on wires.
It was an incredible scene.
This scene has people like everywhere you look.
Hanging.
There's people everywhere,
flying.
Just floating, spinning, turning, shooting, pretending to get shot. Like it was like almost too much to take in. Like you had to go back and rewatch it so you could like see all the sections of your screen. Like,
the special effects were amazing. In fact, you know what? Gordon's jumping in. He's saying that some Eagle kit parts that were from Space 1999 were used in the launch sequence.
Oh, really? Are they? Can you see them? That's interesting.
Very cool. Yes, and I think I heard that. And then Mike saying sharks with freaking laser beams on their heads. Yeah.
Laser beam. Is it too much to ask?
I know, right? But it was an incredible space battle, and that's what they were doing. It was almost like they were trying to. It was like Star Wars in space. I mean, where you're having this battle taking place, and of course, with the laser effects and sound effects, space is a vacuum. So they were trying to actually have reality where it wasn't too much of the sound effects taking place too, but they still had a little bit because they had to make it interesting. Because
That was a thing. That was a thing from the promotion. That was a thing from the get-go. Broccoli promised science fact, not science fiction. Now, go back and think about that scene. Is it really science fact?
Is it or isn't it? That is the question.
No, that was not science fact. That was science fantasy. Like that was a complete fantasy. Everything going on. Did you guys catch? So I was watching a review and someone pointed this out. Did you guys catch that when Bond and Goodhead get on the shuttle and they're going off to save the day? She grabs a clipboard and a pen and is floating in G.
Yep.
And she starts. What could she possibly been like? Was she doing paperwork that Drax's henchmen were supposed to do? What was she writing on that clip? Was it her last will and testament?
That was all for the effect. That's all that was for. That's
What could she possibly have to write? She was going to save the day and kill Drax or whatever, not do routine paperwork.
No, I know. And again, that was just to add to the visual, to amplify the visual.
It was just to show. It was just say, look, the pen's floating.
The pen is floating, and then
but. It was just such a weird little moment. Like the pigeon.
Like the pigeon.
Stands out in this movie.
Oh, you know what? Gordon just wrote in there too, and this is very true. There were some main mission lamps hand-me-downs that were on the set, from Pinewood Studio. Speaking of which, and I'm kind of going back, sound effects that were utilized in this movie also were used in Space 1999. If you guys that there are the hardcore 1999 fans out there, anytime there would be like an explosion or something, somebody was like destroying equipment in 1999, there was a specific sound effect that would be utilized. And believe it or not, in that sequence with the two sequences within this movie, the one with the glass, everything breaking when Bond was in that fight, that same sound effect, if you go back and watch the movie, you're going to pick it up there. And then also when the cable car is going through the wall, the brick, when it's crashing into the wall and it comes and, Jaws goes flying and everything, that sound effect can be heard. So it's interesting how, audio sounds as well as sometimes, even visual effects are recycled and reused because it's part of a library that they have.
Yeah, they have a library, really cool. like the Wilhelm screen. It's used a lot. Yeah. So the guys are being really funny. They think that she was doing fuel consumption computation. Of course, that would make perfect sense.
Fuel consumption distant ratios is explained in Lost in Space. I knew it.
Exactly. Dave LaFrey is like, you got to sign those shuttles out or you'll be in trouble with the quartermaster. Yeah.
Oh, geez. Good one, David. Good one.
Oh, God. All right. So, and then we've basically reached our happy conclusion. Everybody, the important people live. We do find out, we think for a hot second that Bond and Goodhead can't get away. And it's Jaws and the girlfriend that helped them get away. And so we think for a hot second that they die on the space station. Right. Jaws dies on the space station, but then no, one of the American guys turns and reports, we've rescued 2 more people. It's a really tall guy and a blonde girl. And you're like,
so we know that Jaws and Dolly and the pigeon that was actually in the shuttle are safe.
And the pigeon that joined them in the shuttle, they all made it. They're safe.
Oh, one thing we didn't cover though, which we have to go back before all this happens, and the station is starting to fall apart.
In the wall.
Bond sees Drax running, and he runs after him. And Drax is basically seeing his whole plan going down the tubes, and he's seeing it's just going to go up in flames. And Bond is coming after him, and Drax is just going slowly and slowly and slowly back.
Zero G, you just move slow.
And then what happens is he sees a dead body and right there, and he picks up the laser gun and he says, you know what, at least I have the pleasure of knowing that I'm putting you out of my existence. And then Bond, being the resourceful Bond, puts his hands up, and of course he's got the gadget that Q gave him in the beginning of the movie, and he shoots at him, and then he goes, ugh! And he's like, heartbroken, Mr. Drax. And he goes, here, let me show you the airlock.
And he puts him in the airlock.
He says, take a giant step for mankind, and he gets sucked out, and then that's the end of Drax, which was fitting.
Tons of one-liners in this movie. We got Play It Again, Sam. Like, we got, because, the other thing is, way back in Rio, or where the hell we were in the Amazon, that boat chase, tons of gadgets. He lets out a bunch of different things from the back of the boat. They're all Bond
the missiles.
Gadgets. Yeah.
Bond is great with that.
Yeah, this was a good movie for gadgets. They did get to using them. It took them a bit, but they did get to using them. So yeah, one-liners and gadgets. But here's the thing, and I think even the producers and Broccoli kind of admit this. When all was said and done, they kind of realized when the one-liners outweigh the actual dialogue, you might have gone too far. I think they kind of realized, we might have pushed it just a little.
This movie definitely borderlined on silliness. I mean, it crossed the threshold with that, and it went to a new dimension. In fact, when Roger Moore went to see this movie, he went to the screening of this film, and he actually was with Sean Connery. Sean Connery, basically shrugged and kind of gave him the look about this, because it was silly. But to your point earlier, you know what? He was Bond, and he was being paid to be Bond, and he made it a reality. But it is a job, and it was a job that he carried on. Some people have said that this has been deemed as the worst James Bond movie, but as from a financial standpoint, it was one of the best. It held the record until 1995. So
it made
that says a lot to me. And we're kind of venturing out of the sci-fi element here. I mean, I always was a Roger Moore fan. I went to the James Bond movies, starting with this one. I saw the earlier ones on Channel 7, like on ABC, like I was saying earlier. But For Your Eyes Only, I love the title song. I love Sheena Easton. The movie was decent. Julian Glover, who was in Space 1999, he was in Empire Strikes Back. He was in Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. Excellent actor. He was in that film as the heavy. But then there was Octopussy, and then there was A View to a Kill. And I don't know if you guys, I'm dating myself here, but A View to a Kill, one of the villains was Grace Jones. And that movie, I believe, had not Maud Adams, that was Octopussy. That was Tanya Roberts. Roger Moore was like 57 years old when he did that movie. And he even thought, I pushed the limit with it. And it just was really, really starting getting hokey. I mean, Duran Duran did the song, the title song for A View to a Kill. But it just, to me, was probably the worst Bond movie that in my opinion. So when people are like cracking on Moonraker, I'm like, really? I mean, Moonraker was just a fun movie. It was a little satirical at times, but to me, it really held up though.
Yeah, Moonraker was funny. For me, the worst Bond movie, whichever one was a Timothy Dalton one where they're in the snow a lot. Like they're always skiing and snowmobiling. Mm-hmm. Whatever, I can't remember which one that was, either View to a Kill or whatever. I can't remember. I fell asleep during that movie. So therefore, to me, that is the
that was the Living Daylights.
Living Daylights. Yeah. Whatever it was, they were in Russia, Serbia. I don't know where they were, Siberia. I don't know, but there was snow. They were always skiing. There was always a chase in the snow. I don't know what they were doing.
I wasn't a big fan of that, and I love Timothy Dalton in License to Kill. He actually that is probably one of my favorite James Bond movies, and that one came out in 1989. And interesting enough, it would be 6 years before.
Really? 89? Wow.
Yeah. I mean, I thought, Felix Leiter, who was a recurring CIA character with James Bond. So Bond definitely had a familiarity with the CIA because Felix Leiter was a recurring character played by different people. In fact, here's a trivia question, guys. Who knows who was the actor who played the first Felix Leiter? Does anybody know? And the movie was Dr. No. It was 1962. Just curious to see if from trivia, if anybody knows the answer to that.
So all in all, this movie, I'm going to give it a thumbs up. It was funny. It was a spectacle. There was something to look at in every scene. Oh, and you know what else you could look at in almost every scene? Product placement. Did you not come out of there thinking perhaps I should have a 7-Up while I smoke my Marlboro and book my flight on British Airways?
That's true. That's very true.
It just, there's tons of product placement in that particular movie.
Absolutely.
7-Up.
John Hay got it, and Mike's getting it. He's saying the Hawaii Five-0 guy. Yes, it was Jack Lord. Jack Lord was first.
Oh.
He was Felix Leiter. Jack Lord actually portrayed Steve McGarrett from 1968 to 1980, 12 seasons playing, Steve McGarrett in Hawaii Five-0. But yeah, that was before he actually had done that, which was kind of cool. But yeah, he was the first Felix Leiter. And then David Hedison took over that role later on, and he was in I believe You Only Live Twice. And then what happened was in License to Kill, they brought him back. And that was a central part of the character story because Bond's friend had literally, he almost lost his life, and it was by a drug killer, drug lord. And he was looking for retribution. And it was a very powerful movie. But yeah.
All right. Interesting.
So I'm very happy that you actually, here's the Star Trek connection with Martin. Jack Lord actually was up to play Kirk in Star Trek. It was him, and it was also Lloyd Bridges, and it was William Shatner. And
Lloyd, okay, so Lloyd, I can't think of. Do you guys remember? Was it Lloyd in Airplane?
Yes. Yes.
And
I picked a bad day to stop sniffing glue, and he's like.
So that's Lloyd to me.
Yeah, and also he was Commander Kane in Battlestar Galactica in the 1978 version. Yeah. Yep.
Oh wow.
Yep. That was Sheba's dad.
Sheba's dad. Yeah. Wow.
So crazy. a lot of connections. Everything is interwoven here in sci-fi land.
Yeah. Supposedly there's a bunch of connections to this movie to Superman 1, but I didn't dig them up. Some I just saw that I was reading material and I just saw that in passing.
But you know what? You were mentioning Superman, the movie too. You know what? We really have to give Derek Meddings. I mean, his visual effects in this movie were amazing. I mean,
up for an Oscar.
Yep. I mean, he really knocked it out of the park. So, I mean, major kudos to him and what he did.
And the set builder. Some of those sets were they were all 3 stories tall and just.
Ken Adams. I mean, he was fantastic. I mean, this stuff is just, to think that this movie is 41 years old just blows my mind. And Mike, like you, I know you've seen Star Wars close to 100 times. I've probably seen this movie, in all honesty, probably 50 or 60 times because my parents used to have something, HBO, I'm really dating myself, but in the 76, 77, HBO was the premium channel. So, you had your regular television, which you got your basic channels, but then there was the cable that you had to go with it. So you got stations 2 through 13. My parents were actually able to, instead of getting HBO, they got something that was called Prism. And you literally had this box that went onto the TV, and it was, you would change the selector, and that gave you the Prism station, or you could get HBO.
Oh, really?
And this, yeah, this is back, and that was considered a lot. And I actually got to see this movie when it came on this channel. And fortunately, we had gotten an early VCR. I think it was like in 79 or 80. And I actually taped this movie, and I would watch it, over and over again. It was just a really, really fun movie. And I just really, really liked it. The only scene, believe it or not, that I didn't like was the scene with the gondola going through, Venice, and then, the pigeon.
Because the pigeon. Double take pigeon.
Double take with the pigeon. Vince remembers the prism.
Who decided that would be a good... Not that just removing that particular element would suddenly make the whole movie all better, but it just was such an odd...
It really was. And
out of place.
They were doing that, and it was almost giving homage. And again, this goes back to what you were saying when we started. This movie was really following parallel to The Spy Who Loved Me. And that, if you go back and watch that scene in The Spy Who Loved Me, where the car comes out of the water, I mean, it's almost like scene by scene with the dog and everything, and the guy drinking the drink and everything. It's kind of crazy. But yeah.
So it was just, it was like a rehash. Yeah, well, hey, if it works, roll with it,
But I'm happy to hear that I subjected you to a James Bond film that you had never seen before. So this is kind of cool, because it's kind of like, seeing something fresh from the first time. This is a 40-year-old movie. Yep. So that's kind of cool, actually.
Yep. Not what I expected.
Not what you expected.
Not at all. I expected like Craig, like Daniel Craig.
Daniel Craig. I know, Daniel Craig in a Speedo, which Roger Moore was not in a Speedo.
I expected like serious Bond. Like even Sean Connery's Bond. Oh, he had humor too, I guess. But it was more serious. I expected serious Bond. I was not expecting this at all. But I enjoyed it. I really enjoyed it. I would be up for another edition of Roy Made Me Watch It. Because you're always talking about stuff, and I'm like, oh, I've never seen that. I should totally check that out. And then
definitely, yeah. I think that's going to be kind of like that'll be kind of a side corner with this.
A little side thing, yeah.
Yeah, definitely. But guys, I'm seeing the comments come in, and yeah, John Haig saying, he remembers Prism. Yeah, out of Philly. That's right. They used to do everything at the Spectrum, John. That was a big thing back then. Mike's saying, I've seen most of the Bond movies dozens of times too. Yeah, it's like, especially the earlier Bonds. One of my favorite Bond movies with Sean Connery is actually From Russia with Love. And interesting enough, there's a piece of music that we didn't talk about before that's from Russia with Love that they actually used in the chase scene where Bond is in the Amazon and with the boat sequence. They actually replayed music from that really? Movie, which was kind of cool. Rob is saying the Beach Boys song in View to a Kill is as bad as the pigeon. Yeah, that's kind of scary, but probably kind of true too.
Bond is just its own genre. Like it kind of defies. So I was trying to think. I'm like, is it a psychological thriller? No. Spy? Yeah, okay, spy. But it's just its own thing. It's Bond, and it's its own thing because it's so like it's a trope. And it gets referred to like Austin Powers or Saturday Night Live. If they start doing a Bond thing on Saturday Night Live, you know immediately what they're doing.
Oh, absolutely.
Any TV show or movie that refers to it, if they start doing spy thing with Gadget, you know where they got it. You know what they're doing.
It's immediate. It's instantaneous.
Yeah.
Which
makes it iconic. It is now an iconic part of our pop culture.
It really is, and it's coming up on its. I remember when the 50th anniversary was coming up, and it came in past. The 60th anniversary is only 2 years away.
Wow!
In fact, Daniel Craig is slated. I mean, that movie was supposed to be released in April, but then with everything that happened with the COVID and everything, they pushed it out to November.
Yes.
Yeah. So
now I've heard talk of Idris Elba maybe taking a turn at it.
That would
maybe that's just talk.
No,
maybe
it could be.
Not.
And it would be for the 60th anniversary. I would imagine they would want to release it in 2022. So it's going to be interesting.
Oh, I'm saying it's the same boat chase as Thunderball. Yeah, maybe it is.
Good stuff. Well, I guess we should start winding down. And, I just want to give a few shout outs. I'll start with you, Mary Beth, with you and Mike on Wednesdays with Sci-Fi Distilled. You got some interesting stuff coming up, right?
This Wednesday, our guest is Dave Lafredo. Dave will be with us. And we are going to take a deep dive into Blade Runner. And now that's a heavy movie. Like, if you've gone to film school, you probably dissected Blade Runner at some point on multiple levels, on how it was filmed, on how it was structured, on how it was written.
There's so much to that movie.
Like, there's on the themes going on. There's a lot going on with that movie, and we're going to unpack all of it with Dave. So that'll be Wednesday night at 7.
Very cool. I actually remember seeing that movie in the movie theater. And the interesting thing about Blade Runner is there were so many variations of that. There's been like director's cuts. There's been, another form of a director's cut. There's so many versions of it out there. So it's really a cool movie.
Just watch one. That's all we need. Just homework, watch one. Or maybe go read Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep. That might help too.
Oh, there you go.
There you go. So.
And I also want to give another shout out to the Country Gate Theater. During this time, we were talking about this earlier, there's just a lot of stuff that's going on out there. And, especially theaters, community theaters and of like, are not able to, have the performances that they normally would because of the COVID-19 situation going on. So stay tuned, check out their website. It's a very special theater, very close to my heart. And their website is www.countrygate.org. And Bill, Gina, and Marissa are going to be posting things that are going to be coming up in the very near future. So there will be stuff that you will be able to watch online. So just, check out the website. Again, it's www.countrygate.org. And, just, check it out. And
all the houses across the country are dark right now.
Yeah,
all of them.
It's just a really tough time for everybody.
If you can help, please do.
Yeah. And I will be back on Sunday at 7 p.m. My guest co-host is going to be a very old friend of mine that I have not seen in a very long time. And his name is Ross Amico. And I'm very much looking forward to him discussing another 1979 movie. Some people may think this is a cheesy movie, but it was a fun movie. And I think it's important to have some fun times. As Mary Beth and I were talking about at the beginning of the show, this is a time where we can kind of break away from things that are really serious and just kind of let loose and just kind of laugh. And the movie that we're going to be discussing is Star Crash. And I'm not sure if you folks remember that movie. It's with Carolyn Monroe, Marjorie Gortner, an Italian film. So it should be a lot of fun. Stay tuned and, check it out. And we will be on at 7 o'clock Eastern Daylight Time. That will be on Sunday. The other thing I ask too is if you're definitely enjoying us and you're liking us, which I hope you are, and I really appreciate, we appreciate the support. Just remember, if you can just share the new link. Again, it's Roy's Tie-Dye Sci-Fi Corner. And again, it's taking over for remembering science fiction shows of the 1960s and 70s. It's just a better way to, remember the show. And also we're talking about 60s and 70s, not only TV, but movies. So it's kind of a broader picture out there with that. And the other thing is I have uploaded previous episodes to my YouTube channel. I will be posting that on the website, so you can check those out. A lot of times, people are busy and, of course you can't watch it live. I really want to say thank you to our international viewers because we have a lot of people that are watching over in the UK and, or Germany or France and even Australia. And Andrew, thank you for always checking in. Andrew's out there from Australia. So I know that with the time differential, it really makes it tough, especially when you're going into a Sunday and Monday. So you can check out the past episodes. And the other thing I want to mention too is Nick Tate will be joining us next Sunday, not this Sunday, but on the 14th, June 14th. And it's going to be at a special time, and that will be at 4 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. We're doing that to accommodate our international viewers, as well as, for Nick, because it'll be a little bit earlier for him. So again, June 14th, it's a Sunday, 7 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. Nick Tate, part 2 of our interview, and guest hosting with me. So looking forward to it.
Cool.
Yeah. So again, Mary Beth, thank you for, being my co-host. I really appreciate it because it was an
thanks. Yeah, thanks for having me. Thank you for introducing me to Moonraker.
Moonraker. So everybody just stay safe again with everything going on. Just watch yourselves and just, let's all stick together as human beings and, as people, because we all are people and we all deserve the respect of one another. So for now, live long and prosper. Take care, everyone. Bye.